Well, as you know, everybody, I get sick sometimes, and because I'm sick, I decided that today we're just gonna play some Wind Waker again, because all 64 of you who like hearing me talk about things are so generous to tune in when I need you to. Has anyone noticed the vibe shift at all in our culture over the last couple of weeks, should I say? Yeah, I know it's a little bit of stating the obvious, but ever since the big orange man has, and I don't mean that derogatorily, I mean that facetiously, ever since he has, won again, I've just noticed that people are less afraid to really speak up against this authoritarian groove that's been taken over the culture over the past maybe 7 years. When I was in college, as you guys know, 2016, 2017, that's when everyone really started to focus a lot on hate speech and not pissing people off and being mean. And I actually was all on board with that kind of thing, right? But I guess when you oh crap, I don't even know what I'm doing right now, but I guess when you are so upset with culture that all people who represent a different time, a time that you have sort of framed as the worst time in human history, then obviously you are going to maybe hate those people a little bit. Boomers, Gen X, millennials, people before the 1980s, saying things like men and women are inherently different. That was just nobody thought that was strange back then, and it's still pretty obvious, but because of our culture and how insane it is, a lot of people are afraid to speak up, or at least they were afraid to speak up. And I think that in the last 2 or 3 weeks or so, it's just the culmination of the last 7 or so years where people are like, nope, I don't give a shit about this censorship anymore. Fine, cancel me. What are you gonna do about it? Are you gonna call me a bigot, or some other epithet that I've already heard 1,000 times before? And yeah, because of that, just basically nobody really takes cancel culture seriously, if you will. And that is obviously, it's a good thing in that people are more free to speak their minds, but also what is that going to lead to? I mean, I don't really look at anything as a one-sum game where one side of the political spectrum, one side of the culture wins, and then, oh yeah, history is finished. We're definitely not going to deal with bullshit anymore. It's more one of those things where, right now, maybe it's a positive moment because we're all kind of united under this ethos where we don't want to, oh, I already killed that guy, fuck. Okay. Where we don't really want to be censored anymore, where we're tired of this PC woke crap, and now that we're united, I'm just curious where the culture is going to go forward, because the ultimate thing, I think, bringing people together is just free speech. That's all it was. It's just the ability to express yourself freely without any major legal repercussions, because as we've learned, speaking and thinking are very closely related. Some people even make the argument that speaking is thinking. If you can't speak, you can't think. Sorry guys, I'm so fucking stuffed up. The other thing is that our culture is just completely spiritually dead. And when I say spiritually, it's just that no one believes anything that they can't see. Even though it kind of seems like we've moved past the idea of God. Now, God being the ultimate value, right? To Christians, God was just the ultimate value. Everything leading to absolute truth would lead you to God. In the same way that, if you're progressive and you don't believe in God, well, what is your absolute truth? Your absolute truth is, making sacred of ethnicity, sex, and race, and all that. So, that's your ultimate truth. And because of that, well, actually, no, and the reason I say it resembles a God is just look at how people are willing to defend those truths. So, anybody who, here's a fun example. If I were to say that men and women are different in that, men just... When we were more nomadic, from what I know, women would stay behind and take care of the community, essentially. And when they were doing sexual selection, they would select among the men in that group, meaning that females are naturally more competitive with one another when it comes to men. Men, on the other hand, when they were going out to hunt and kill animals, didn't really have to worry about that sort of selection process, because the game's already kind of, I wouldn't say it's rigged against them, but women have women are the sexual selectors, men are not. I mean, so when men are going out and hunting, in order to be like a desirable dude, you have to know leadership skills, you have to know your shit, and to hunt with your fellow mates, if you will. Learning how to just instinctively work together was basically like your survival instincts 101. And I think that saying something such as that, even like alluding to it, oh god, that fucking rat is a piece of shit, even alluding to that would have gotten you canceled like 4 years ago. Now I'm saying that on the internet, and yeah, it's gonna piss some people off, but it won't have the same cultural repercussions that it did all of those years ago. I think that what was considered like far right 4 years ago, which was probably not even that extreme, most people are more willing to admit that, like, yeah, you know, that you lean right of center, go figure. But that's just another thing that I've noticed over the past couple of years, because like I got into a lot of trouble for speaking about Martin Luther King, for example. Like back in 2018, right when this stuff was really starting to pop up and everyone was getting sick of it, I was just saying, like, hey, you know, shouldn't we judge people for the contents of their character more than their racial background? Like, I understand if you want to talk. I'm so fucked. This guy is gonna probably burn my barrel. I understand that if you want to talk about the socioeconomic background of people to have a healthy dialogue, fine. But like, it's not the only criteria that defines your character, and people sort of treated it that way. So I always brought the Martin Luther King quote to remind us that, like, hey, you know, content of character does actually matter. But in response to that, you know, a lot of people were saying that, oh, well, you're just whitewashing Martin Luther King's legacy, that he was a black man who wanted to do something for a specific community that, you know nothing about. And I think that, from what I know, the idea of not judging someone by the content of their character is pretty judging someone for the content of their character and not for their immutable characteristics is pretty straightforward. And everyone's just sick of it. Everyone, like, these days, 2024, what happened this month? Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Nobody is going to give you shit for discussing these things, provided that, I guess, you don't go too far outside of the Overton window. And if you want to know what that is just check the vibes. You know, what kind of things can you say which will most likely make a normie uncomfortable? That's probably a sign that you're stepping outside of the Overton window at this point. And to say that, like, men and women are different, judging people by the content of their character is preferable to their immutable characteristics, yada yada. Knowing that these things are able to be said freely in the discourse now is, I think, a good sign. But where things move forward is like we've moved the pendulum, right? But are we going to move the pendulum even further to the right? You know, I talked about this in a previous video of mine, but like the culture that we're currently in has done pretty much everything that it can to remove Darwinism from the equation. Darwinism, or should I say social Darwinism, being like, you know, characteristics that obviously we can't change, but that might give you a specific advantage in society. And given that we've been so sensitive to that over the past 50 years, like, even the mention of it still kind of makes some people wince. But I still see it in, like, 4chan discourse, online discourse, where, you know, like, some people might make the argument that IQ is one of the most important facets to a person's character, and that's something that you can't really control. And then, you know, I've seen talks of eugenics on the deep web, if you will. That certainly make me uncomfortable. So, like, I think the free speech thing is great, but all it's really shown is there always will be shitty people out there who think that they're superior, better than other folks around the globe for whatever they were gifted with, and you can't really do anything about that. I don't think that fighting ideas with legislation is a good idea, as we've seen in many books. Like 1984 is a perfect example, or like trying to reach utopia. That'd be like Brave New World. You don't need to. We've recognized that these are all flawed ideas, but rather, like, the best way to fight an idea is with a better idea. And I think that's essentially what we've done. I hope that, like, over the course of the next few decades, that's like the That's the standard that we maintain. There's no discourse that's not allowed. People should be we should be ready for it at all times, and you're going to come across ideas you don't like. I come across ideas I don't like all the time, and what do? Do you shut them up, or do you fight them with better ideas? I mean, in the context of a debate, probably better for us to fight with the ideas and not silence people, which I think was a serious problem like 4 or 5 years ago. But now that everyone is they're fucking sick of it, silencing is not an issue whatsoever. And so I'm not nervous. It's just strange to me, guys, because like I'm 26 years old, and this sort of really reached its peak when I was like 21, 22, 23. The internet felt like a little bit of a different place, because all the little spheres where the doomers would hang out was very like isolated, separated from the rest of the internet, and it feels like that's kind of bled out into other parts of it, where you could find doomers like Wojak, people discussing like the end of civilization and like the problems that nobody wanted to talk about 3 or 4 years ago. Now there is like, yeah, now you hear political pundits discussing it, streamers, etc. Like, it's strange how the vibe is just so drastically changed over the past couple of years. I'm excited. I've been waiting for this. I saw it as early as 2016. I've been fighting this since 2017. And now now it feels like the war, it's not been completely won, but it's definitely in the favor of people who prefer free speech to legislation. But now it's up to us. Now if we have the best ideas, now it's up to you to fight the bad ideas with what you believe in. Now, what you believe in and how we define what is right and what is wrong, that's obviously a little bit more difficult to define. I'm kind of in like this like in-between space between like a Nietzschean will to power sort of ethic, and then taking a little bit from my family's Christian roots, because my folks were more on my father's side. They were all like Protestant for the most part, except for, I have some family with Catholic down the line. And that was sort of like the way that they lived for the longest time, living by the Bible, living by God's word, believing in salvation via Jesus, all that kind of stuff. And that was cool, but at the same time, there was a missing elements to that, where maybe I'm a little bit more of a materialist than I'm willing to admit, but the nice thing about Nietzsche is believing is not enough. It's really acting it out. Acting out what you believe, and hoping that, not even hoping, but like comporting yourself in such a way where your ideas really pan out and fight on the ideological battlefield. So in the future, I mean, if culture is gonna go in a direction that we want it to, yeah, continue fighting with the good ideas with bad ideas. But then the interesting thing is, like, the United States is like still split into two factions, and I wonder if they're going to continue to grow apart. One's going to eventually like eat itself alive, where like you kind of see what happened in the Soviet Union, where obviously communists still exist, or Stalinists even still exist, but then they no one really takes them seriously, and there's a huge stigma associated with them for the amount of turmoil that they caused in their own country and around the world. So maybe like with this really far left sort of woke stuff, I don't know. I think it's I have a weird feeling that the reason the more right-leaning or centrist types are going to win out for this period of time is specifically because you don't really have to say anything. Even by virtue of not saying anything at all, you are still going to be called out as like, far right by the people who still uphold the far left values. Like just an example of this is in activism. If an activist has a specific cause that they're fighting for, and you're skeptical of whatever his cause is, and then as a result of that, you say, yeah, I'll think about it, but I'm not entirely sure. Even a slight rejection of the activist's message will get you labeled as usually right in the modern day, which is no fun. It's no good. But that is the reason I think that everything's going to win out, because people who don't think left are center and right by proxy. Eventually, like, you can only purify your belief system so much until, like, you lose a large portion of folks who originally supported you but no longer will because you alienated them. Like I know people in my own family who have been left-leaning people their entire lives, and they're just like, you know what, man, I'm done with this shit. I can't handle the vitriol, the rhetoric anymore. It's just I'm tired of it. And I think that is essentially it. It's fatigue, it's apathy, and the apathy gets you labeled far right. And at the same time, I mean, it sounds like hypocritical or paradoxical, but that apathy has led to like a portion of the people going out and voting against that stuff. Now, I personally don't. I think one of my close friends said it really succinctly, but like politics is a lot like sports. You're not a part of the team. Maybe like one team more, but it doesn't really do anything for you in your real life in the end. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Maybe that's a little too cynical to put it, but like even if the political party that you like wins, that is not guarantee that the future is going to be in your favor. I think really what matters is the vibe, the culture, what people are talking about, and how they're willing to like digest ideas. So yeah, that's about all I wanted to get out for this little segment. I will move it on to the next episode now. So thanks for this one.